The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Back-to-back NFC North champs and 1 seed. Doesn't get any better.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast.
15-2. 15-2. Think about this for a second, folks. I'm like, oh, let's break it down. We'll break it down. But just stop. Stop wherever. If you're in your car, if you're watching at home, stop and breathe for a second. Let's do a little breathing exercise. 15-2. We may never, ever, ever see this again. The Detroit Lions finished a season with 15 wins. They went from 3 to 9 to 12 to 15. The Lions. We're not talking about the Niners or the Cowboys or the Packers or the Chiefs or any of these proud franchises, Sterling Frazier's, Pittsburgh Steelers. No. The Detroit Lions just won 15 football games in a season. Wow. Just wow. How awesome is that? How awesome was tonight if you were at Ford Field to witness that and to be a part of it? The fans were amazing tonight. It was deafening in there. It was loud, and the defense fed off of it. They did. For anybody that says, well, the Lions right now on the road, they would have been fine going to the Rams next week. Are you kidding me? Do we really want part 3, Lions-Rams, hearing that big mouth Kelly Stafford and her BS for a week? No. I'm good with Minnesota and Rams. Y'all play next Monday night. Enjoy yourselves. Lions need a break. They need rest. And they get 2 playoff games before the Super Bowl at home. Can you imagine what Ford Field is going to sound like for an NFC Championship game? Let's not put the cart before the horse here. But regardless, just awesome. What a job tonight by the Lions. It was not pretty. Second half, the Lions pulled away, but that first half, we had ourselves they had us scratching our heads at 10-6 at the half. Thank you, Will Reichert, by the way, for kicking the football out of bounds on the kickoff with 20 seconds left in the first half. Thank you. What did Bradford Banta say on yesterday's show, in case you missed it? The former Lion, he was great. He said this could come down to special teams, and that was a huge swing. It was 7-6 Lions. And then the Lions got a free 3 points because Will Reichert kicked the ball out of bounds. Lions got 2 plays, went right down the field. And Jake Bates nailed a 48-yard field goal to put the Lions up 10-6 going in at halftime. Second half, it was the Jahmyr Gibbs show. And we're going to hand out game balls. We're going to talk about the offense. We're going to talk about Gibbs. Injuries, Terrion Arnold in a walking boot right now, not a good sign. The return of Gaines media poster boy, the flowing locks, the blonde bombshell, Alex Anzalone. What a job tonight by him. Man, what a difference he makes on that defense, huh? I predicted 41-37. I thought this was going to be a track meet and a shootout. If I would have told you this morning, and by the way, was today the longest day of our lives? Oh my God. It was like 6 o'clock, and I'm like, wait a minute. We got another 2 hours and 20 minutes before this thing kicks off. Oh, mercy. And then then it's like 8:20 and 8:23, and then they're going to the Jeff Daniels intro for the 5,000th time. Hey, did you know Jeff Daniels is from Detroit? Oh my God, just kick the ball off, please. I don't want to hear from Jeff Daniels for the 7,000th time. Holy hell. Please just kick it off. We were waiting for this game to start. All right, I might have just lost it there, but bear with me. Anyways, so by the way, what's that stupid show that wins all the awards? My wife was watching the Golden Globes tonight in the other room. Oh God, The Bear. Yeah, the Bear is not a comedy. They're stealing awards from funny people. The show's not a comedy. All right. What was comical tonight was just poor Sam Darnold. Oh, the Lions destroyed that man. Seriously, the Lions tonight attacked Sam Darnold. They attacked him like Jim Harbaugh always says. Attack every day with enthusiasm unknown to mankind. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. They went after Sam Darnold tonight. And Aaron Glenn, if Aaron Glenn is not a head coach next year somewhere, there needs to be an investigation. This was one of the greatest coordinator jobs in football history tonight. Sam Darnold was 18 for 41 for 166 yards and a passer rating of 55.5. That is pathetic. Now, when he had some time, did he miss open receivers? Yes. But that dude was hearing full footsteps all night long. All night long. And it was Blitzburg out there. The Lions were sending the house, and they put their faith in their cornerbacks and to play man coverage, and those guys responded. And I hope Terrion Arnold's injury is not serious as we're recording right now, but it looked like that left foot was in a walking boot from what I heard. Hopefully it's not an Achilles or anything like that, please, because he was awesome tonight. But Amik Robertson, man, that dude balled out. He held Justin Jefferson to 3 catches for 54 yards with 8 targets. That's it. You hold Justin Jefferson to 3 catches. That incredible. Absolutely incredible. How many quarterback hits to the Lions? 10 quarterback hits tonight. 10. And I've been on this defense, and I've been all over them about got to get pressure. In the front 4, where have you been? Was it Darius Smith? Where have you been? Muhammad, Reeder. Come on, guys. We're Pascal. And they all made plays tonight. They all were in the backfield knocking Sam Darnold down. And look, the Lions caught some breaks tonight. Jared Goff, intentional grounding in the end zone was not called when it was 7-0. That was a big play. There was a helmet to helmet that wasn't called that the Lions got away with. The Lions had caught some breaks. Jefferson's alone in the end zone and Darnold overshoots him. But you know what? You also make your own breaks. The Lions made it so uncomfortable for Darnold tonight that going into the next round against whomever it is, it'll be the lowest seed. It could be Green Bay. It could be Washington. It could be Minnesota again. That's what Dan Campbell said. Dan Campbell told Kevin O'Connell, see you in 2 weeks when they shook hands at the end of the game. It could very well be Minnesota again. But making things difficult for the other team's quarterback, making him uncomfortable, that was job 1 tonight, and the Lions did it. They did a phenomenal job. And Jahmyr Gibbs, 4 touchdowns, 20 touchdowns on the season. 20. Dude is a superstar. Superstar. And remember, there were games this year where he's not even on the field for the first possession, the first drive. It's David Montgomery's show. Man, the Lions have awesome depth, and what a job Brad Holmes did. And I apologize, Brad, for the 510th time when you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. And I said, what are they trying to take a running back at 12 for? My bad. My bad, bruh. Sorry. Never again. I'll never doubt you again.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Jerod Mayo is out after only one season as head coach of the New England Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast.
Pats fans, it was an interesting day in Foxborough on Sunday, January 5th, 2025. Rookie quarterback Joe Milton III passed for a touchdown. He ran for another in his NFL debut. But the New England Patriots cost themselves the number one overall pick in the NFL draft with a 23-16 win. That's right, folks. A win in this case was a bad thing. We're going to get into that in just a moment. But a 23-16 win over the AFC East champion Buffalo Bills. The Patriots now finish the season at 4-13, snapping a 6-game skid, but a loss would have guaranteed them the top pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Instead, the Patriots now fall to 4th. And guess what, folks? That's not even the biggest story of the day. Far from it, because today we are going to be talking about the ouster of Jerod Mayo as head coach of the New England Patriots. We're also going to be talking about the Pats' victory. It feels like a defeat for a lot of you out there, and I don't blame you. We're going to talk about what it means for the Patriots this offseason and into their rebuild. And we're also going to break down the in-game action as well, as there were a handful of Patriots that had pretty impressive performances on Sunday. So settle in, Pats fans. You are not going to want to miss a single second of today's show. But we needed not only one, but two level-headed opinions, even-keeled voices. So I didn't waste any time. I went to the bench and I got the biggest bat that I could find. That is my good friend, the resident voice of reason here on Locked On Patriots, columnist extraordinaire at PatsFans.com, as well as being the co-host of another amazing Patriots podcast, Patriots 4th and 2, my good friend Steve Balistreri. Steve, you always say, may you live in interesting times. We are certainly living in interesting times as we record this podcast on Sunday night, Paisan.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah, I mean, what a crazy day. You know, they had one job today. You know, they've been losing consistently all year, and they just had to lose one more, and they turned around, you know, and again, they, like the Bills, they emptied their bench. They played a lot of young guys, and hey, the young guys were hungry. They showed it. And, you know, you have to give a tip of the cap to the Buffalo Bills because they tried really hard not to win this game. And we all know that. You know, you could tell by watching the game that the Bills had no interest whatsoever of winning today. And it was funny because, as you know, I listened to Bob Socci and Scott Solak on the radio, and then I just mute the sound of the television. And Zoe even said, the Bills are going to go down and score a touchdown here at the end of the game. And then go for two and throw it like 15 rows deep.
Yeah, there's definitely that level of petty that still exists between these two franchises. And I definitely want to circle back to that in just a moment, because everything that happened today on the field, folks, is going to have a ripple effect on the New England Patriots, both in the offseason and in this future rebuild. And Steve, that rebuild got a much anticipated kickstart. In the aftermath of today's game, Robert Kraft issuing a statement saying this was one of the hardest decisions he ever had to make, but the responsibility he has to Patriots fans led him to believe that the best decision for the organization at this time was to let go of head coach Jerod Mayo. How surprised were you by the act itself, first, Steve, and how surprised were you by the timing? I would say the former was less surprising than the latter.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we talked last week and you know, I said I was kind of 50-50 that I thought they might let him go. And I think winning today was the final nail in the coffin, although I would venture to say their decision was already made, you know, before today's game. And, you know, I think the cat's out of the bag. You know, Mike Vrabel changed his avatar, I guess you could say, you know, today or yesterday. So, which kind of leads me to believe that they've already had conversations with Vrabel. I think it's just a formality at this point. But yeah, the fact that that they fired Mayo only an hour after the game, I think the Crafts, they could sense the fan base turning not only against Mayo and the team, but against them personally. We've been hearing and seeing a lot of different things on social media with the fan base, and they're lambasting the Crafts as well. And we kind of sensed that big changes were going to happen. I was still kind of teetering that they might decide to keep him for a second year, because let's face it, I mean, he proved he wasn't ready for the job. I think we were all in agreement for that. But, with all new coordinators, he's a new head coach, and with the roster that he was saddled with, I kind of would be able to understand if the Crafts decided to give him one more shot. But I think that ship sailed a couple of weeks ago, and I think it started with Arizona, and then last week with the Chargers. That was, even at that point, I was like, man, I think this ship is getting ready to sink.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to talk about the tide turning with this fan base, ask anyone who was at Sunday's game. Take a look at the parking lot. Take a look at the sparse seats that were still available at kickoff, during kickoff, and throughout the game. It was a predominantly pro-Bills crowd there. Buffalo traveled well. They outnumbered Patriots fans. Since when does that ever happen in Foxborough? And look, you could see the erosion of enthusiasm and even the erosion in trust in this team from the members of its fan base. Now, that leads me nicely into my next question for you, my friend, because you and I are both doing our best speculation at this point. I want to be very clear on that, folks. Neither Steve nor I are reporting on any inside information that lead us to believe this is the move. This is our opinion, but it's looking very likely that Mike Vrabel is going to be the choice here. Is this the right move for the Patriots? Because some might tell you that a proper search was not conducted the last time. That if the Patriots don't conduct a proper search this time, they're doing themselves a disservice, maybe keeping themselves out of the running for guys like maybe even Liam Cohen or Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinators of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Detroit Lions, respectively. So, Steve, in that regard, if the Patriots have made up their mind, if the Crafts have zeroed in on Mike Vrabel, is this the right choice, or really should they be doing a better job of vetting all their options at this point?
Well, I think, I think Johnson would be the best choice for any team at this point, because he brings so much to the offensive side of the ball. But I think he's going to have his choice of jobs, and he's probably going to look for a team that's a lot closer, to building something than the Patriots are. I mean, They basically stripping it down to the to the floorboards here. But Vrabel makes so much sense for the Patriots. He played here. He was a tremendous football player for the Patriots. I remember he wasn't even a full-time guy with the Steelers.
Right.
And then he was so smart. He was so versatile. He caught 11 touchdown passes from Tom Brady, and besides being a great outside linebacker, Bill Belichick always talked about how smart a player Vrabel was. And we saw that in the coaching, once he became a head coach. But you look at that Tennessee team, I think you have to say that Tennessee, those Tennessee teams that he coached, I think they were all overachievers, because they never had a very good roster. They never had what we call a franchise quarterback. But he got them to a, AFC championship game. And then it started to take a toll with the injuries the last 2 years. And that's why they let him go. But a lot of that, the reason they let him go was a lot of politics. And I know that the ownership in Tennessee was livid at him when they were on a bye and he came back here to go into the Patriots team Hall of Fame.
Right.
And some of the comments he made were not looked upon very nicely by the ownership there. But I think he's kind of that nice mix between an authoritarian coach and a player's coach. He cuts them no slack. He calls them out when they screw up, but he's also one of those guys that, if you read that story in The Athletic this last week, about how the culture he built, that's the kind of culture the Patriots need to get back, and
right on the money.
I think there's no better person right now, that they could bring on other than him.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast.
The Tyreek Hill comments after the game, and he thanked Dolphins Nation, Fin Nation. A blessing, y'all. Open doors for the Hill family forever. Nothing but respect and love. But effectively told a number of local media after the game that Tyreek was opening his doors to any opportunities that are best for him, and certainly sounded like effectively saying that his time in Miami is probably come and gone. And I don't think it's a secret when you watch Tyreek Hill and you go back and watch game tape from earlier in the season and how Tyreek Hill played in some of those instances and opportunities, that Tyreek Hill was not playing to the standard of which you would expect and hold the highest non-paid quarterback on your team, right? And Tyreek made the point to get a reworked contract before the season in order to get his pay realigned with some of his contemporaries after a new wave of wide receiver top of market contracts. And Tyreek fails to finish with over 1,000 yards on the season. He has the drops against San Francisco and talks about how he's not practicing enough. And then he practices really hard and he has a really productive day against the Browns. Then he plays in this game with 2 catches for 20 yards and effectively removes himself from the game 2 snaps into the second half, never to be seen again because the score in Denver, or with Denver and Kansas City, was out of hand. And because he'd been going through some things this season with the wrist injury. People have asked me, and I have heard things going back to September during the IR stint with Tua about Tyreek and where he was at, and the temperature check for him and where he was at as obviously a critical piece of the team this year, and never really got the warm and fuzzies about it. And then he says the quiet part out loud, talking about not practicing enough. And if you go to training camp, and if you've been to public training camp in either the last 2 seasons, what you quickly find out is Tyreek kind of comes out on his own independently. Most of the time, he doesn't come out with the rest of the team. So sets his own schedule. And this is one of the things where people have asked me, as I was talking to Tyler DeSena at the end of last week about potentially moving on from Tyreek Hill this offseason. And that was before Tyreek Hill effectively came out and said that he wants out. And people have asked me, how does that make the roster better? And from a talent perspective, it doesn't. But I do think this team embraced a more balanced offensive approach this year, even if the way in which they did so was effectively playing at times with one hand and sometimes 2 hands tied behind their back because of the ideology that they applied in constructing the roster and the decisions that they made and the buttons that they tried to push. And then how they realized once they were into the season, we kind of have to play this way to work around that. And it was not very pretty. And it became very apparent watching the same handful of screen variations, and you get in the red zone and you take a loss on first down, and now you're outside the 5-yard line. And we don't try anything else other than just a handful of angle and perimeter tight end screens in the red zone trying to score a touchdown when we're up in the game. So when you're handcuffed to that regard, in many ways by fault of your own, some for player availability, some for the ideology those who put together this year's team embraced and effectively doubled down on this season versus last. There's only so much you can do to play effectively, right? And that meant more touches for the backs. It meant more touches for Jonnu Smith, who was an excellent player this year for the team and was a successful addition to the roster. But that ate into the number one overall player in the NFL as voted by his peers, who had been on this pursuit of 2,000 yards. And when that happened, and then the wins stopped coming to the degree in which they did, and I think if you studied closely Tyreek and the way in which he played and his mannerisms throughout the course of the season, it kind of became apparent that this year weighed on Tyreek Hill. That would not be a surprise if you watched it unfold in real time. So I am frankly not surprised at all that Tyreek Hill had these comments. And am I maybe a little bit surprised that he had them to say immediately after the game? Yes, but then again, he also took himself out of the game after the first 2 reps of the second half in a game that was a 1-score game into the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. If you're going to do that, he got his cash raised for this year. He got his cute little number one overall player trophy. And then the targets and the race for 2K stopped coming, and Tua got hurt, and this is where you're at a couple months later. And I think it's important to remember the Dolphins did not extend Tyreek Hill. They moved cash from the end of his contract into the current year and guaranteed money from 2020 or for 2025. Tyreek Hill's decided that he's done with the Dolphins. And frankly, if I was the coach of the team, and my star player removed himself because they were unofficially eliminated from the playoffs because of the score of another game, I'd probably be done with him too. Tyreek will have some kind of market. It's not going to be the robust kind of market that you're going to be really excited about, but he will have some kind of market. Stephon Diggs was extremely disgruntled and had multiple years of money and guaranteed dollars left on his contract, and he got traded for a future 2. He got traded for a 2025 2 for the Texans, and they tore up the rest of that contract. Well, effectively, anybody that would be trading for Tyreek Hill is looking at 1 year of guaranteed money, and then a big bloated salary in the back end of that's probably not going to be lived up to. So it's probably going to be a 1 year rental. So you're probably looking at some kind of a day 2 asset for Tyreek Hill. And Stephon Diggs was the same age when he was traded as what Tyreek Hill will be traded, assuming he is traded this offseason. And that's kind of, like McDaniel said, I'm not going to fight emotion with emotion, and emotions are kind of high. But I think you look at the full body of work this year, and even if from a talent perspective, it makes your wide receiver room less. Jalen Waddle, I think, would be much more impactful and would not be so ambiguous or murky of a talent if he was the one. Malik Washington's been lovely. There's everybody wants size in this wide receiver room, so I think there's some opportunity to add a player of that regard to the wide receiver room to kind of complement it a little bit more. And you could continue to be balanced and sharing the ball between the wide receivers and the tight ends and the running back, and not feel obligated to have 50% of your passing yards and 45% of your first reads and your progressions on all your passing plays going through a single player. In case in point, to go back to that team in Western New York that the Dolphins are looking up at again this year in the offseason, their mantra this year after they traded Stephon Diggs was everybody eats. And they were very balanced. And guess what? When you're very well balanced, and it becomes not who do I need to get the ball to, and instead, how do we remain or how do we take the proper read and find the proper player and get him the football, suddenly there's another efficiency that comes with that style of play. And I'm not justifying like not having top end talent for your roster. You need top end talent because Jimmy's and Joe's trump X's and O's more often than not. And I think this year's Dolphins team is a nice embodiment of that, because they tried to say, well, it doesn't really matter who's playing at this spot or this spot. We'll just call the right plays with the right motions attached and push the right buttons, and we'll coach our way around all the scheme or talent deficiencies that this roster has. Doesn't work like that. So there's pros and cons to this development for Miami. But for a player whose value is only going to be even as high as it is now, and it's not as high as what it was when you acquired Tyreek Hill. And I think Tyreek was a necessary talent to kind of jumpstart the scheme and jumpstart the development of Tua Tagovailoa. And Tua's got his own questions, but he's certainly matured in the 3 years that he's been here under Mike McDaniel with Tyreek Hill. It goes back to the saying, people come into your life for a reason or a season, right? And Tyreek Hill came into the Dolphins' lives for 3 seasons to be exactly, but like the metaphor is a season of like the calendar year, right? It's not for forever. And sometimes when that happens, then there's no longer a mutual need for one another. And if you told me that's the place that we've reached with Tyreek Hill, after all of the off-season headlines, after some frustrating play this year, after availability and removing yourself from a game, and then saying what was said after the game, I wouldn't take any exception with that either. And the only thing that I wish is that Mike McDaniel would have stood up for the rest of the guys in that locker room that didn't quit on playing the second half of that game because Denver was up big on Kansas City. Because reminder, 10 has a C on his chest. And that wouldn't fly with me if I was the head coach of that football team.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Looking at the wild card round, the Pittsburgh Steelers are big underdogs to the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers have limped into the playoffs, and many are wondering how quickly they'll get bounced. FanDuel thinks it'll be fast. They have the Ravens favored by 8.5. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
We're talking significant improvement to the roster.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs.
Wide receivers who are hitting the portal. We talked about how if you can't crack a starting depth with this talent and this room on this team, then I don't want you here. If you couldn't push. Tuggle, it seems like, is staying through, developing through. Let's go to the quarterback side of things.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the incoming first, because we talked about wide receivers, so it makes sense we transition out incoming, and then we go Jaden Rashad a third segment.
We'll go Jaden Rashad. Daniel, we said huge need. You just got done saying huge need at wide receiver. A quarterback's best friend, Daniel, is a highly touted, twitchy, fast. Give me the ball at any place. Now, stop me if you've heard this type of receiver before that can play on the outside because they got speed, can play in the slot because they don't care about getting hit, and they got twitchiness in between the 5 to 10 yard route tree. And when they have the ball in their hand, they're going to get past the defense and get going. Everybody last year was lazy to call Ladd McConkey a Wes Welker. It's only because he looks a certain way. Okay.
Yeah. And we don't have to get into what that certain way is, but that's fine.
I stopped. Let me tell you, the incoming wide receiver, Daniel, that we have, Zachariah Branch, the Branch brothers, today, Sunday, have said, we're coming to UGA. We're a package deal, 1 safety, 1 wide receiver, best wide receiver in a class that when he came to USC, and Lincoln Riley had said, and Daniel, it is a Ladd McConkey, but I don't know. We're going to have to see on the field because Ladd McConkey was a 3-star. That should have been a 4-star. But I'm just going to let you know a name that as evaluators have seen this kid's tape. I'm going to tell you a name of what they see him to be in the NFL. And that's one of Mr. Hill of the Kansas City Chiefs and Dolphins, who is one of the twitchiest, fastest, ball in hand, watch out, touchdown coming wide receivers we've seen in a hot minute. Branch comes on over and says, the legacy and prestige of the Georgia program means they will be competitive and the standard of college football. This is what he said. I'm coming to UGA because it's the standard and the excellence is going to continue for years to come. Daniel, this is the biggest get in the portal that Georgia has ever gotten.
Oops. Yeah, you're not. He didn't stutter and he didn't need to. This is the number 3 rated player, according to On3 Sports, in the entire transfer portal, Zachariah Branch. This would be, if you just take his coming out of high school last year numbers, this would be the highest rated wide receiver that Georgia has ever gotten in the history of the program. And so you're talking about a guy that is already has a pedigree in terms of recruiting prowess and the way he's been evaluated that exceeds many of the people. You're going to pair him with Taylor coming in next year, another 5-star wide receiver, true freshman guy. And now all of a sudden you've got a little bit of, little thunder and lightning combo there for you, Clint, at the wide receiver position. But no, Zachariah Branch, people are going to be all over themselves to make the Ladd McConkey comparisons. And I'll tell you where you're right and I'll tell you where you're wrong. Okay? Now, before I do any of this, let me be totally clear. Nothing that I'm about to say matters as much as what you do on the football field.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladd McConkey did on the football field and is still doing on the football field exceedingly well, like AKA better than most of the receivers in the AFC.
The best receiver of last year's draft.
Okay, so he would win Offensive Rookie of the Year if it weren't for his former teammate, Brock Bowers. Okay, so nothing matters as much as what you do on the field. So Zachariah Branch still has to prove it no matter what. But let me tell you how he's similar to a Ladd McConkey, and then I'll tell you how he's different from a Ladd McConkey. Okay?
Go ahead.
Similarities are that this guy gets open because of his elite ability to change directions on the football field. He is, you call it whatever you want. You call it twitchy. You can call it route running. You can call it getting in and out of breaks. You saw it when you watch. I mean, go watch the tape of the Ladd McConkey cone drill from the combine last year.
That's when you knew this cat is unlike anything else at this year's draft. You saw the cone drill. You saw how quick he got 5'10". The shuttle was unbelievable. You're telling me Branch is similar to that?
Yeah, no, I'm telling you that Branch, that is his game. Like, that is absolutely who he is. And so the ability to run routes, you play him in the slot, you play him on the outside. He's only 5'10". Ladd McConkey, also a bit undersized, 6 foot. Ladd McConkey, 6 foot, 185. Zachariah Branch, 5'10", 175. And so they're pretty similar in terms of size. What Branch lacks in height, he makes up for in his ability to jump more so than Ladd McConkey and go up and high point the football. But neither of these guys are going to win with raw physicality or like elite size. That's not who they are. They're going to win the same way that Tyreek Hill wins, the same way that, like the guys like this win. They're going to win by absolutely putting defenders' jock straps on the ground because of their ability to get in and out of breaks and run routes. So that's how they're similar. Now, I ask you this, Clint. There's a lot of fire Mike Bobo out there. Okay? I've heard a lot of it. I've heard a lot of fire Mike Bobo out there. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you a simple 2-part question.
Okay.
Part 1. Did Mike Bobo have a guy like that on this year's roster that he could go to?
Nowhere near Him.
None.
Not even
None.
like class 1, class 2, class 3. It was class 1 and then maybe class 4.
None.
Maybe.
Last year, when Mike Bobo did have Ladd McConkey on that roster, did it work out pretty good in terms of production?
Ladd McConkey, when healthy, was an absolute game changer that opened everything. You want to talk about 14th in the SEC in rushing when you have Ladd McConkey on the outside and you can't load the box with another safety because one has to stay on top of his side all the time? Yeah, it opened things up.
Mike Bobo used him and used him well, and he did so to the tune of a really productive season. Lest you forget, last year, Georgia fans, the team was undefeated going into the SEC championship game, and then a 3-point loss to Alabama kept us out of the playoff, which was absolutely insane. So, Mike Bobo's got that guy back. Now, let me tell you how. Let me stop the Georgia fans who are going to be quick to make this Ladd McConkey comparison. And again, nothing matters except what you do on the field. But I am here to tell you, Clint, that Zachariah Branch ain't no Ladd McConkey. He's way faster.
No, there.
Like,
gentlemen.
He's, listen, way faster. The comps that make sense are not to Ladd McConkey. They are to guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Like, these are the guys.
Oh,
He's faster than Jalen Waddle. Zachariah Branch he ran a faster 100 meters than Jalen Waddle.
Yeah. Now, guys, I want you to imagine this. Cass Jones, damn good dog, did amazing things for us.
Sure.
Very happy. When he caught that open touchdown.
And stumble, fumbled into the end zone.
That's right.
But
imagine
he caught it, which is more than I can say for some people.
I can't. Imagine Gunnar Stockton playing the game, looking over and saying, I want to test out what this right arm can do. And Branch going, okay, sure. Try to outthrow me. Go ahead.
He won the state championship in the 100 meters and the 200 meters.
Daniel, the time.
Yeah, he ran a 10.33.
10.33 and a 21.
Yeah.
21 in the 200. Like, y'all.
He's very fast, but he's also very twitchy, so he's got that elite top end speed, but he also combines it. That's where the Jalen Waddle comp, to me, honestly makes more sense than the Ladd McConkey comp. Georgia's got an elite wide receiver. Now, Zion, his brother, coming over as well, has had some injuries, has not had the career, but the safety position, a position that we are going to need depth. And I would not be surprised at all if Zion Branch is a contributor on this Georgia team. But make no mistake, Zachariah Branch is the most important transfer portal pickup in the history of the Georgia football program.
Y'all,
period.
It's not we said wide receivers had to improve. Kirby Smart, the weekend after his father passed, is back in the building and getting the top wide receiver you can get, the top wide receiver you could have gotten last year. And now he gets him here in Athens because he wants to continue.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
106 to 100. Let's go ahead and get into it. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so there were a couple of different things that Kentucky was fighting in this game. First and foremost, it was Florida's ability to crash the glass. Offensively, Florida is the second best team in the nation in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They went out today, grabbed 15 offensive boards. They had 31 second chance points, and yet it did not matter because of what Kentucky was doing offensively. We'll get to that later. But the Wildcats fighting the offensive glass in this game, while also fighting what was an interesting game, to say the very least, from this officiating crew. They called the game pretty loosely in the first half. Actually, I would say extremely loose in the first half. Almost nothing was getting called until very late in the first period. You were seeing physicality. You were seeing guys bumping into each other. If I'm not mistaken, you saw Elijah Martin trip towards the end of the first half because Otega Owe bumped him. There was no call on that. And then all of a sudden, you get into the second half, and every single thing is getting called on Kentucky. Every single thing. 20 personal fouls in this game. 20 personal fouls for Kentucky, ended up being 35 free throw attempts for Florida. 22 of 35 from the line were the Gators. If they make 6 more, if they make 7 more, which they could have absolutely done, Florida could have won this game, and yet you see Kentucky pulling out the win. Fighting the offensive glass. Fighting what was just a really weird officiating game, I guess I should say. Not what you want to see from Kentucky in terms of physicality. You saw it get a little better in the second half. You saw them close that first half super strong with a couple of kill shots, actually. If you don't know, Evan Mia, a big-time college basketball analytics channel, he has this metric called kill shots, where if you go on a 10-0 or more run, then you mark it down as a kill shot. And Kentucky had 3 of them in this game. 3 of them, and yet they only won by 6. That just shows you how good of a team that Florida is. You have to give respect to the Gators. You have to get credit to guys like Walter Clayton Jr. and Elijah Martin. Both were absolutely phenomenal today, minus some issues at the charity stripe for those 2 players. Those guys were huge, and that's what we were saying heading into this thing. Could Elijah Martin and Will Clayton Jr., alongside Will Richard, could those guys get you a win without a ton of production from your front court? Florida got production from their front court, absolutely. It just wasn't in the way that you normally expect it. Alex Condon and I believe it's Chinyalu is how you pronounce his last name, number 9 for the Gators. Both those guys combined for 18 total rebounds and 19 points. They were doing insane work down low, just super physical, just a lot of weight behind these guys. This is something that I noted in the preview episode. This team, this Florida team, packs a ton of punch down low, not necessarily in terms of scoring output, but in terms of just muscle. And that was going to be a major issue heading into this game. Amari Williams early on in this one struggled mightily, rebounding the ball. He struggled in the post defensively. He struggled with a couple of different shots offensively as well. And yet him and Brandon Garrison, they were able to battle back. They were able to fight back and play pretty well, I think, overall in this game. If you want to go look at the plus-minus, Amari Williams, -2, Brandon Garrison, +3. We'll get to the plus-minus here later on in the show because it's interesting. It's very interesting how this box score sort of lines up here for the Wildcats. Extremely balanced scoring effort from a crew that ended up shooting, is that correct? 57.8% from the floor. Absolutely insane. Again, just a massive, massive win for Kentucky. The Wildcats, I believe this is now their 3rd quad 1 win on the season. And we'll get to KenPom here in a little bit whenever those analytics update. But man, Kentucky going out and showing that they can compete with just about anybody in the nation. If they play that game again, you're probably not going to see Florida as dominant on the offensive glass. You probably see the game called a little bit differently. Again, I'm just so baffled by the way that this game was called in the second half, as opposed to the first, because you can only have one or the other. Either it's a really physical game and you call everything, or it's a really physical game and you just call nothing. You cannot have it one way or another, just kind of whenever you please up and down the floor. giving up off that many offensive rebounds. It'll hurt them in the future. The problem is, looking at their schedule, the problem with that is they play so many teams in the SEC that do such a good job on the offensive glass. Georgia, the next opponent, 10th in the nation in offensive rebound percentage. Mississippi State, right after that, 27th in the nation in offensive rebound percentage. Texas A&M, first in the country. If we see Kentucky just struggle to crash the glass like they did today against Texas A&M, I may jump off of a building. I will not be able to handle A&M's performance in that game if that's just what you're going to see.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Looking at the wild card round, the Pittsburgh Steelers are big underdogs to the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers have limped into the playoffs, and many are wondering how quickly they'll get bounced. FanDuel thinks it'll be fast. They have the Ravens favored by 8.5. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Warriors missing Jonathan Kuminga, who's on crutches. He will miss at least the next 11 games. Comes at a very inopportune time with a winnable schedule coming up. And then the Kings, meanwhile, don't have a head coach. But what they do have is a team playing pretty good basketball. What'd you see from Sacramento, who led wire to wire in this?
Chuck, well, good to be with you, man. It brings me back to our old days a couple years ago. Hope you're enjoying yourself out there in the Midwest and it's not too cold for you. But I got to stop you right there. Let's not start with the Kings don't have a head coach. The great Doug Christie, they want the interim tag taken off out here in Sacramento already. Okay, he is on I believe what is he? 4-game winning streak. They're 4-1 in the Doug Christie era. It was really messy early. Yes, I know. I heard from Warrior fans they've beat some teams missing their stars. They beat a Mavs team who they were missing 4 starters. They beat a 76ers team, no Joel Embiid. Then they went on to win another game, and Ja Morant was missing against the Grizzlies. So everybody was thinking, this is a fluke, this is a fluke. They do go in and take care of business against the Warriors with no De'Aaron Fox. I got to be honest with you, Chuck. I almost feel bad for Warriors fans because we haven't seen.
I get the mute button. That's the power of hosting the podcast and also being the producer, Styles. I opened it up the wrong way, asking you about the Kings, forgetting the fact that you did switch your beat over the years. So I'm just going to discuss how this one went down, man. A first quarter for the Warriors, no free throws. They turned it over about 1 million times, 13 in the first half to be exact. There was a point there where Draymond threw it away after a made basket, and then the Kings, it's Kevin Huerter who hits the 3. It was a 5-point stretch in about 15 seconds. The Warriors, meanwhile, were chucking up threes. They were not taking it to the basket. Doesn't help when you have Jonathan Kuminga not getting rebounds defensively, to be specific. Trace Jackson-Davis just got cooked in the game, and the switch to Kevon Looney was way too late from Steve Kerr, in my opinion. Sabonis was just everywhere in this game. And then offensively, there was no movement. There was a play where Kyle Anderson had it on the block and everyone was standing around. He's like, what do you think? I'm going to go ISO here? Like, it's me. It's slow-mo.
Yeah.
Like, move.
Yeah.
Move. Buddy Hield didn't help at all. He had one of his worst games, I thought, as a Warrior. He was a minus 35. I think that number is correct. Yes, a team worst at minus 25, I should say. But not good at all in his 18 minutes of play. So let's just ask you this. From seeing the Warriors in their dynasty stretch to now watching them, I would say a lot more than loosely. I mean, you're keeping your tabs on your hometown team, man. What's going on with Golden State right now? 2 straight great games, and then today it's back to, is this just what happens in a back-to-back? Is it as simple as that? Or do we have some serious issues in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I just think that a lot of these guys were a bit overvalued, right? I mean, early on, It reminds me of that 107 game win season from the Giants when you have Buddy Hield. I know the Warriors were on pace to be the highest scoring bench. And, people were in my mention saying I was a hater when I said Buddy Hield and a bench. I know DeAnthony Melton, they missed DeAnthony Melton, but Buddy Hield and a bunch of bench scorers being the bench that's going to carry you and the secondary scorer to Steph Curry, that's just not going to cut it. And they overvalued everybody, really. They started off overvaluing Jonathan Kuminga, who has been playing well. They overvalued Trace Jackson Davis, and now they overvalued Buddy Hield. You just talked about Kyle Anderson. Everyone thought it was a good pickup, but this guy was what? I mean, he was barely in the rotation in Minnesota. So it's just a bunch of guys that got overvalued, and it feels like the Warriors are the land of misfit toys. It's Draymond Green, it's Steph Curry, and it's a bunch of guys who are trying to figure out who they're going to be in the league. And that's just what it is right now. I see on the comments, someone saying, shut up, man. Hey, I didn't get blown out by 30. I'm sorry. I didn't get blown out by 30.
Oh, you're only going to make it one segment today if you keep this up, man. So it was a 7-0 run to start the game for the Sacramento Kings. Sometimes it's just one of those nights where you know what it's going to be. And it was that way against the Philadelphia 76ers Warriors on the winning end, where you just knew that, like, from the get-go, it was going to be ugly for Philly. Same goes for the Memphis game when the Warriors lost by 50 points. Sometimes you just do not have it, especially on a back-to-back. But just kind of a weird game overall, because the Warriors did claw back. It was like 15 or 16 early. The Warriors bring it to within 4 because they get 2 Curry 4-point plays. I mean, Steph was great in the first half. He had 20 points. Hits 2 threes while he gets fouled, knocks down the free throws. Second one, he was stunned. Curry was like, did that just happen again?
Yeah.
Twice in one game. Andrew Wiggins starts attacking. Warriors looked like they were going to be fine. Like, it was just a sluggish start, and they were going to turn it around. And then it wasn't even really the bench unit. It was just some careless Draymond turnovers. Curry had a few turnovers, an 11-0 run, and then it's 15 again, just like that. And then they let Malik Monk get going. And then it's 24-5 run in 5 minutes. And the Kings just really opened it up on the Warriors in that first half. And the Kings, who don't really have a good bench at all, their bench was probably better than Golden State's today.
Yeah, I will say, Chuck, I'm checking it here. 34 points off 22 turnovers. The Warriors turned it over 22 times. The Kings got 34 points off that. It's hard to win a ball game like that, and then you're not shooting the 3 ball too well. Let's see here. The Warriors shot, it wasn't good. They shot 34% from 3. But as far as the bench is concerned, that's what I was getting to before I got muted in the first segment here. But Kevin Huerter, he's a guy who's been in trade talks for almost 2 seasons now. Kevin Huerter has not shot the ball like that in a very long time. Keegan Murray, he's been injured. He's been dealing with just having the hardest defensive assignments. He hasn't shot the ball like that. So I really think, honestly, the Warriors, I'm having a little bit of fun here because I do miss being on with you, but I do think the Warriors did catch the Kings with their backs up against the wall. No De'Aaron Fox, no expectations. So they were just playing really free. And somebody needs to tell the Warriors, don't be too proud to double Malik Monk, because that man kills the Warriors every single time they play each other. Just double him. Get the ball out of his hands, because he plays, I tweeted this, Chuck, he plays like the Warriors were supposed to draft him. I don't have any reports. I don't know that he ever was. I don't know if the Warriors were even in contention, but he plays like the Warriors were supposed to draft him, and everybody knows it except for the Warriors.
Yeah, Monk was awesome. 26, 12 assists. And then, DeRozan didn't do much, just 12 points in the game on 5 of 14 shooting. They keep him in check. Keegan Murray got off to a hot start, hitting a trifecta of threes, and then didn't do a ton the rest of the game. He finished with 11, Ellis 11, but you're always going to get good defense from Keon. And then Sabonis, man, 22, 13, and 7 again. When are the Warriors going to get some size, man? We've been clamoring for size for years, and it's easier said than done to a certain degree to at least find a finished product on both sides of the floor. But at least defensively, someone that could stop Sabonis. Come on now. Your best option in the game today was Looney, who goes 16 minutes and was only a -6 in those 16 minutes and did grab 5 rebounds, had 9 points. Looney was the much better option than Trace Jackson-Davis, who went for 0, 2, and 3. Steve Kerr's making a whole lot of money to figure out that, to figure that out early. I mean, the report says that Looney always plays Sabonis pretty well. I mean, go back to the 7-game series that they played a few years ago. Looney was getting 20 boards multiple games.
Yeah, but I don't know, Chuck. Me and you are both baseball guys. You do want to have a bit of a set lineup. I don't know that Steve Kerr, he's already bouncing with the injuries that they've had, and Kuminga's coming off the bench.
All bets are off, though, man. With no Kuminga, with no Gary Payton, with no Brandon Bajemski. I mean, at a certain point, all bets are off this particular stretch. You go with the better fit, and it just seemed like Looney's bulk to help down low with Sabonis, and his rebounding abilities were a little bit better than Trace Jackson-Davis, and the numbers prove it.